Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms video. I am RoyalMixGaming and today's video is going to be about the best legendary and epic commander combos. So when you're starting the game, you'll get a lot of epic kind of commanders and you'll have a lot of different commanders that you'll max out fairly quickly. It'll take you some time to max the epic commanders out, obviously from events and things like that, but they are fairly free to play friendly. They are free to play friendly because you can do it at any time, and you get them from gold keys and silver keys and things like that, so that you can get a maxed epic commander fairly easily. And that's why I'm making a best legendary and epic combos, because it's going to help out the lower spenders, free to play players when they are first going into the Season of Conquest, and even in KVK 1 and 2 and 3. So I'm going to give you basically two pairs of each troop type other than leadership, because leadership doesn't really matter other than with full legendaries or in KVK like 1. Basically 2, it's really irrelevant, so I won't really list anything like that. So it's going to be infantry, archers, and cavalry. So we're going to start off with infantry, and I'm going to give you basically two of my best pairs that I think that you can do for the Season of Conquest. And also, some of these will be for like KVK 1, 2, and 3, but the majority are going to be for Season of Conquest, just because this is going to help out the early players that are first going into their first Season of Conquest, and so they can use legendaries and epics in their first one, because once you are in Season of Conquest for a while, you need to try and get as many legendaries as possible, because they're just better than epics overall. So we're going to start off with infantry first, and I think probably one of the best infantry pairs with a epic is going to be Guanyu first, as a 5-1-5-5 Guanyu, and you're going to pair him with a max Sun Tzu. The main reason I would say that is Sun Tzu is going to have a 5-target AoE, give you extra rage per target that you're going to hit. He's also got some health. He's also got some 10% all damage reduction, which is really nice. Bonus skill damage, which is going to help out your Guanyu and your Sun Tzu, which is really nice and is going to help you out in the open field. And it's fairly tanky and is going to help you out with your infantry in the open field, because Guanyu is going to be able to do a silence, a big damage. Sun Tzu is going to generate your rage and you're going to fire up that silence really fast. And it's a pretty good legendary and epic combo that is I would rate fairly highly. The second infantry commander that I'm going to recommend to you for the infantry that's going to be legendary is going to be Scipio Africanus Prime. I have him, I think, level 40 or something like that down in this area, because I haven't really invested into him just yet. But you would use Scipio Africanus Primary, and you're going to use, you can do two different ones, mostly because I think that Guanyu is mostly for Sun Tzu. But for Scipio, you could probably use Bjorn or use Sun Tzu. So I'm going to go ahead and go over Bjorn, because we already went over Sun Tzu. But the same similar effects are going to happen when you're using Sun Tzu with Scipio. It's going to generate more rage. Scipio is going to fire off his health debuff that I'll talk about here in a second more frequently, which is really nice. Bjorn's more of a debuffer than more damage, similar because Sun Tzu is going to do more damage than Bjorn. But this is also an epic and legendary combo that you can do for Season of Conquest. It's pretty good. So you're going to have a 700 damage factor and cause the target to take additional skill damage for 3 seconds. He's also going to be, when attacking cities, which is irrelevant, gets an extra 10% attack and defense. And then he gets an additional damage factor that can trigger once every 5 seconds, which is not too bad. He's basically an epic Alexander the Great, which is really nice and is not too bad. I think it just increases your expertise, which increases your primary skill. But like I was saying, you would use Scipio Africanus Prime first, which I clicked on the wrong commander. You're going to use him first because he has a 2,000 damage factor and an AoE, hits 3 targets, and reduces the enemy's health by 30%. You get infantry attack of up to 40%, 15% march speed, triggered 10% march speed when you're outside of Alliance territory, extra 20% health, and an additional damage factor that can trigger once every 8 seconds. Then you're also going to get, on your last skill, a shield, and a chance to take less skill damage when you are basically taking skill damage on the map. And then your expertise is when you increase your skill damage by 10% when the target is silenced. It's going to help you if you have a lot of Guanyus on the field. So if you're doing like Guanyu and Sun Tzu and a Scipio and like Bjorn, you can do something like that to start off with until you want to put the two legendaries together. If you're wanting to do 2 marches, but that would probably not be best. You'd probably want to put the 2 legendaries together. But if you're just starting out and you have them both at like 5, 1, 1, 1, both, you could try and do 2 marches. So when you have more marches on the field with Guanyus, it's going to help you out when you expertise them. But a 5, 5, 5, 1 is good enough. The last skill is basically just you take less damage because you get shields and chances to take less skill damage, which goes really well with Bjorn and Sun Tzu as a legendary and epic combo for infantry. So we're going to go ahead and move on to cavalry. And the first commander that I'm going to recommend to you is going to be Saladin, simply because he's cheap. You get him in KVK 2, and you can use him all the way into the Season of Conquest. So you're going to have Saladin 5-5-5-1. His primary skill is a 1400 damage factor, reduces the target's march speed by 30%, reduces their healing effect by 40%, gives you 20% defense and attack, extra march speed of 5%. He's also going to reduce the skill damage you take by 30%, and the counterattack damage that you take by 20%, which is why you want to make sure that Saladin is the primary. And in all these combos, you want to make sure that the legendary is primary. Putting an epic primary is just asking for somebody to target you in the Season of Conquest. In KVK 1, 2, and possibly 3, it's not as big of a deal because there's not high skill damage commanders that are just going to obliterate you if you use them primary. So that's the main reason I would use only legendaries primary. The first combo with Saladin I would recommend to you is going to be with Baybars. Main reason is he's got a 5 target AoE of 1000, reduces their march speed by 50%, has 20% attack. Third skill is just for cities. And then his last skill is a small healing factor and increases his march speed, I think, when he goes below a certain percent, and then, or it just increases his march speed by 50% when he leaves battle, which is pretty good, so you can get away when you're below 50%, which you get the hasty departure from the tree too for cavalry, and then his expertise just increases his primary skill with more damage. So that's one of the reasons why I would use Saladin primary with Bayobar secondary, which is pretty good. And then I'm going to list another one that's technically an epic commander, but not actually an epic commander. It's going to be Ethyl Flood. You technically can expertise Ethyl Flood for free. Takes some time. I understand she's technically a legendary, but technically she's free. So I'm going to go ahead and list her as probably the better pair over Baybars. So you'd use Saladin first, Ethyl Flood secondary. She provides a 5 AoE health, defense, and attack debuff of 30% for 2 seconds. Second skill reduces counterattack, reduces the target's march speed, and then reduces other targets' march speed too by a little bit different. Then she has I think that was a barbarian skill, and then she has a rally skill also. But it's pretty good because Ethelflaed's debuff's really good for your team, and Saladin and Ethelflaed's a pretty good staple pair that's technically kind of like an epic combo because Ethelflaed is free. You can't even use legendary universals on her. So technically she is an epic. They just classify her as a free legendary. So that's why I'm going to classify her as like the best with Saladin pair. The second commander we're going to go over that's cavalry is going to be Nefsky. He's only Season of Conquest, but you can do him 5-5-5-1. Or once you get further along, expertise him just like all these other commanders. Other than Saladin, you can go ahead and expertise. Because Nefsky's primary skill is 2300 damage factor, reduces the target's defense by 15%, goes all the way up to 45% depending on the amount of targets hitting the targets you are hitting yourself. He gets 20% attack, march speed, and health. He gets extra 20% defense, 10% more damage to, and 5% taken from the targets that he is hitting. His last skill is 25% skill damage, and a chance to do 35% more skill damage. Expertise, he deals 5% more normal attack damage and has a 10% chance to gain extra 30% health for 3 seconds whenever he is attacked. That's why you would want to expertise him, but the pairs that I would do that are going to be epic commanders with Nefsky is going to be Baybars, like I was saying, because he's got a 5 March AoE. You could also consider doing Pelagius because it's going to have a little bit of a heal. It's not too bad, and you can also consider Osman because he does a high single target damage just like Nefsky does, which is pretty good. Some of these other commanders I probably wouldn't do with Nefsky just because they either aren't leadership or cavalry focused. So we'll go ahead and go over Pelagius just real quick. He has a 300 damage factor and an additional damage factor of 300. He gets extra rage, which is going to help Nefsky fire his skills off faster. He gets an extra 15% attack and defense. Third skill is just for cities. It's a small healing factor, which is going to help you out by staying alive a little bit longer in the open field. And he's a decent epic commander to use in the open field. But then Osman does a 1100 damage factor, which is not too bad, to a single target, and goes ahead and does a 15% attack bonus. And then he has a direct damage extra damage factor, and then he has a 10% troop capacity, which is pretty good. That's one of the 3 pairs with Nefsky that I would probably go ahead and do. But once you kind of get a little bit further in, you can do obviously other cavalry legendary commanders like William or XY to kind of move you up and bump you up after that with Nefsky. But those are kind of your starter commanders with Nefsky that you can do that are epic because they'll suit you fairly well. Either going to be kind of tanky or they're going to be giving you some extra rage, which gives your Nefsky the power to fire off his skill much quicker. So the next commanders we're going to go ahead and go over is going to be archers. And the first one I'm going to go ahead and recommend to you is Boudicca Prime, because she does a 2300 damage factor, increases the damage taken by the target by 35%, the skill damage, and then gives you 30% attack and defense, and then you also get 10% march speed, takes 25% less skill damage, has a chance to increase our normal attacks by up to 25% and 50% at different chances, 50% and 20% or 25%. And then when attacking troops, you get a healing factor of 800, and you have additional damage to infantry at 5%. Expertise, you get extra all damage at 10%, which is good. And when you're under control effects, you have an 80% chance to dispel them, kind of like Tommy's debuff of poison or any other debuff, kind of like from Ethyl Flood. You got to clear those kind of debuffs, which is really nice. So the epics that I would go ahead and recommend you to use with Boudicca is going to be going into Kusunoki as an archer, because he does a 300 damage factor to the targets, and he also has an additional damage factor of 250, gets 15% attack and defense. Next skill is another additional damage factor per second for 2 seconds of 450, which is really good, and that's just improving upon, I think, his third skill, which gives you a little bit more attack and defense. Pretty good pair for Boudicca, which is nice to have. And then the other commanders you can go ahead and do with Boudicca is going to be Herman, which I need to figure out where he's at. Herman does a 1150 damage factor and basically silences the target for 2 seconds. And then he's going to give you 10% attack and march speed. Third skill is just for cities, going to skip over it. It has increased normal attack bonuses, trigger chances, which is kind of like Boudicca's skill, which is pretty nice. Expertise just improves upon his primary skill, which is pretty good for archers too. That is basically the reason why I would use those 2 commanders with Boudicca, because they're pretty good, and they're going to help you basically branch into Boudicca, which you can do her 5-5-5-1. Last skill is not necessarily relevant for field necessarily, because it's just healing. Healing's not that great in the grand scheme of things and isn't going to help you all that much. The next pair that I'm going to give you is El Cid, and this is mostly for KVK 1, 2, and maybe 3, but basically KVK 1 is use El Cid primary, and you can use Herman primary or secondary for KVK 1. And go ahead and use a disarm with El Cid, which is really nice because he does 1,000 damage factor and disables active skills and normal attacks for 1 second. Which is basically like saying that you can't do a turn of any kind of damage for 1 second, which is pretty decent when you fire your active skill off, that you kind of just stop the target from doing anything to you. And then he does a chance to do an additional damage factor of 1,000. He has 15 or 20% defense and 15% march speed, has a healing factor of 25%, march speed bonus of 25%, and then he increases his all damage by 25% when he gets below 50% units, and his expertise is archer units led by his commander gain 5% attack, defense, and deal extra 2% to infantry units. So you're not going to want to go ahead and not expertise El Cid, but if you're going to be doing like KVK 1, you can do like a 5-1-1-1 El Cid and use a Herman, and it will help you out in the open field if you wanted to use archers. 5-5, probably 1-1 is good enough. You can try and do 5-5-5-1, but don't go ahead and do your universals into him. It's just kind of an epic pair that you can use in KVK 1 and probably 2. That's not too bad that you can do, which is pretty good for open field. The only other commander I'd go ahead and go into for archers, other than those 2 that I already listed, is Ramses. And you can use Herman or El Cid, or not Herman, or not El Cid, sorry. You can use Herman or Kusunoki with Ramses as well. 5-5-5-1 Ramses primary, and you can use Herman or Kusunoki with him. Get similar results because Ramses does an 800 damage factor over 2 seconds. Decreases the target's defense by 25%, gets an extra 40% attack, skill damage taken reduction of 30%, increases the archer attack by 40%, and march speed by 40% when there's some chances to do that. And his last skill His healing factor and extra triggered, I think, defense, and then his expertise increases his primary skill and gives you a heal immune effect on the target, which is really good. You can expertise him, but 5-5-5-1, and use him with Herman or Kusunoki, and you should do fairly well. And the open field, other upgrades you can do would be legendary combos. YSG goes with all these archer commanders really well. The last archer commanders you can go ahead and try and do in basically KVK 1, 2, and 3 is go ahead and try and do Topmost Third. He does 1,000 damage factor to the 3 targets, healing effect reduction of 30%, gets extra 15% attack, 10% march speed, and extra 15% all damage when you're outside of Alliance territory. And then he gets an extra 10% defense and can cause the target to take more skill damage by 15%. Also has counterattack damage reduction of 10%, direct damage factor chances of 700, and triggers once every 8 seconds. Expertise is after using a skill, troops deal 30% more normal attack damage for 3 seconds. Triggers once every 8 seconds, which is pretty good. You can do him like 5-5-5-1, and go ahead and leave the last skill basically at 1 because it's just chances to do more damage. And you can go ahead and pair him with Imhotep because you can expertise Imhotep with archers and use him also with Ramses, Boudicca, and other archer commanders that I listed already today, and do really well also with Imhotep as a secondary because he inflicts a 20% all damage debuff on the target up to 5 targets within a radius for 3 seconds, causes him to take all damage more, and then it's going to give you 15% archer defense and attack, extra health bonus when you're leading your own city, and then when this commander's troops are attacked, there's a 10% chance of inflicting a debuff on the target for 3 seconds, reducing their skill damage dealt by 15% for 5 seconds. And then his expertise is going to improve upon his primary skill, which gives him extra 50 rage per second for 3 seconds when he is secondary commander, which is why you'd want to pair him with Ramses, Boudicca, or Topmost Third, El Cid, all those kind of archer pairs. The only reason I've listed a lot of epics with the archers is because some of them are in KVK 1 and 2 and 3, and they're a little bit better, I think, pairs than there's going to be for infantry and cavalry, because I'm more into archers, but these are the epic commanders with legendaries that I would go ahead and use if it was kind of my first season of Conquest, or even when you're going into KVK 1, 2, or 3. You can use a couple of these pairs that I was listing, like El Cid, in the open field for KVK 1, 2, and 3, and get pretty decent results from that. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you're free to play, you can use some of these combos to help you out when you're going into your first season of Conquest. So I hope you guys learned something about it today, and I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you on the next one.